I can make sure that everyone is hearing me. That's great. Yeah, I'd like to welcome you to this second alumni convening that is continuing our conversations from 2021 when we met in Washington, D.C. to reflect on various aspects of this Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship program. Many of you are here because you are either supporters of the program or you are alumni that are returning or you are supporting the program in various capacities. So our purpose here today is to reflect on anything that has transpired since we last met and to reflect on some of those that are indicated in some of the literature that you have received. I'll briefly touch on them and then we'll start moving on. But in short, as you know, the program has been in existence since 2013, thanks to funding from the Carnegie Corporation of New York. And as you know, the purpose of the program is to fund African-born fellows in North America, especially in Canada and the US, to return to African universities to engage in curriculum co-development, graduate student and junior faculty mentoring, and to engage in collaborative research with the hope that these engagements will strengthen the university systems of the African continent. So we're meeting today for three main reasons: to look at possibilities for domesticating the Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship Program. As many of you already know, the program is running based on funding from the Carnegie Corporation of New York. The hope is that this is that will enable other stakeholders to fund the program and therefore keep it moving forward, sustainably. But that is one of the main objectives of the second one is to long-term research ecosystem, and then finally making whatever collaborations we create, they are sustainable. We'll look forward to having a very fruitful conversation. Obviously, remember that the comments section is open for you to, chime in as often as you want. We will not always be able to pick up every comment that comments. Making it easy to run the program. As you know, online stuff can be challenging. We're basically muting everybody except the ones that are speaking, just so we can be able to be on time. So basically what I'm going to do right now, next speaker, who is going to be Dina Asinian, Vice President, International Program and Program Director for Russia and Eurasia. Welcome, Diana. I think Diana, you're muted. Okay.
All right, I'm unmuted now. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. So, as you mentioned, my name is Diana Arsenian. I am Vice President for the International Program at Carnegie Corporation of New York, and as such, oversee grant making in the higher education and research in Africa program area. I'm delighted to be a part of this. Thank you, all of you, for enabling me to share a few words with you as part of my opening remarks. As you see from my bio, I am not an Africa specialist, nor am I an education specialist, but I am a diaspora, so I have quite a bit in common with all of you. I was born in Armenia, and of course, I now reside in the United States. So, to be perfectly honest, my colleague Hiba Said, who gave me some instructions on what to say and what to reflect in my comments today. But I'm not going to do that with apologies. I actually want to do something different. I want to share with you my personal story, how the program was launched, and kind of the background for this incredible effort that you have all created over the past 10 years. But I want to start by basically saying that I'm very envious of what all of you have accomplished over the past 10 years. And I'm envious because as a diaspora myself, I'm not familiar with a similar program run out of the United States or North Africa that has this kind of incredible scope, geographic reach, disciplinary commitment and kind of engagement and output of a diaspora in any country or the continent. So I'm very, in a very nice and polite way, as an Armenian American, I am envious. I wish we could do something like this within my own diaspora community, but as you all know, it takes a lot of effort and resources to do that. So let me just talk a little bit about the impetus for the program. About 10 years ago, as you said, actually 12 years ago, maybe 11, then the president of Carnegie Corporation of New York, Vartan Grigoryan, who himself was a diaspora. Vartan passed away, unfortunately, 3 years ago. But Vartan was an educator and a leader of a number of various American institutions of higher learning, and also had always an interest and kind of a lot of engagement with various diaspora communities. Vartan was the one that brought our emphasis on higher education and research in Africa to the corporation 27 years ago, although you probably know that back to our founding over 100 years ago. So about, as I said, 12 years ago, Vartan Grigoryan basically asked those of us working in the higher education and research program in a simple question. He basically said, what is the African diaspora in the United States and what is it? Now, the question came from his own background, as I mentioned, and his own career and his own interests in the engagement of diaspora and its role in various sectors of both American society and in connections with the country. So we did not have an answer to his question, and we couldn't Google it. So what we did is to do a field assessment for us. And Paul did a lot of research. He widely consulted, had many conversations with representatives of diaspora in the United States and Canada. And he came out with findings that pointed to a huge, and I mean huge, African diaspora in North America, United States and Canada. And according to Paul's assessment, this community, at least those that he talked to, had a lot of interest in engaging with African institutions of higher learning. So this was the impetus for the program. Based on this data, Vartan Grigoryan instructed the program and then approved a significant grant to IIE to begin developing and then implementing a program that will bring the diasporan expertise to African universities. And why IIE, you might ask? Well, for many obvious reasons, but which include its geographic reach and scope, emphasis on international education, of course, but also because the corporation was the founding contributor to IIE when it was formed in 1919. So there is another connection between the corporation and diaspora program. So I will conclude with this message. The corporation's dedication to international issues and regions, as I mentioned, is a century old. And our current emphasis, which began with Vartan Grigoryan, remains on postgraduate education in sub-Saharan Africa. The Diaspora Program is one of our major grants and achievements, and I use the term achievement in its full meaning. And all of it is due to all of you, and also due to IIE, as well as to the support of the corporation's leadership and trustees who have continued to commit resources and attention to the program. I also want to acknowledge the relationship that the program now has with AAU, which I believe is also very important. And finally, most of you probably have met Program Officer Claudia Fritelli, who was the lead person within the corporation developing this initiative since its inception. Claudia has left the corporation, but I know that she would have liked to be here and also convey her best wish for all. Very positive. how you incorporate phenomenal success or and function. Again, link so interested in this throughout the world. So thank you. You can go ahead and mute me. Thank you.
Remarks, very informative in terms of the history of the program. And so our next speaker is Mr. John Kokodiniak, Senior Vice President, Institute for International Education. John, I hope I pronounced your name right. If not, maybe you can correct me. Thank you, and go ahead,
Thanks
please.
so much, Pifa, and thank you very much, Diana, not only for your remarks, but all the trust that Carnegie has played with an IIE through history and on many landmark programs in international education. Average fees for our history, most program student that part of my homes and corporations, including this program. For over the last decade, with holders from the Barry regions, not just sub-Saharan Africa, that have incorporated elements of the program into their sustainable planning for engagement of the diaspora. So the impact is profound and extends beyond this program. And I think the reports and the panels that all of you will participate in over the next 2 days will have a great impact on how we even further maximize the impact of the program, both at the institutional level, but also at the policy and level and in terms of informing new programs based on the success of this one. So I wish you great success over the next couple of days and want to thank all of the stakeholders involved in the program for making it so successful. Thank you, and back to you, Kifa.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jonah, for your remarks. As many of you know, IIE is involved in a number of these programs across the globe, and thank you so much for what the institution does to promote international education at a time when we desperately need it. So we'll move on to our next speaker, Oyewole Olusola, who is the Secretary General of the AAU. Prof, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Distinguished keynote speakers, members of the Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship Program Advisory Council, members of the 10th Advisory All-Alumni Convening Steering Committee, permit me to stand on existing protocols duly established by the host to send warm greetings from the entire membership of the Association of African Universities, the apex higher education body in Africa. It is my singular honor to be present at this August gathering of academics of African descent on an initiative that has contributed tremendously to the advancement of higher education in Africa for the past 10 years. The Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship Program, CADFP, is undoubtedly one of the most successful diasporic intervention that is very focused and well organized and well thought through. We, those of us, the African academics on the continent, we are very grateful to the initiators of this program, and especially to the Carnegie Corporation of New York for financially supporting this program since its inception. And also, we are grateful to the Institute of International Education, IIE, for expertly administering it. As we have assembled virtually today to mark a significant milestone of the program, we are being guided to discuss on not only the program past and current achievements, but also discuss the strategies to sustain and amplify its impact. I am very glad to convey the unwavering support of the Association of African Universities to our strategic partners, the Carnegie Corporation of New York and the Institute of International Education, for taking the lead role in North America to promote collaborative research, curriculum development, and academic mentoring across numerous African universities through this CADFP program. The AAU is ready to deepen the collaboration and has opened its door for more strategic alliances that will widen the scope and the impact of this program in Africa. We look forward to these next 3 days of academic discourse on the CADFP initiative, and we look forward to greater collaboration with each one of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Oyewole. We are going to move next to Jeremy Coates, who is the lead Foundation Programs Institute of International Education. Before he comes on, many of you know that Jeremy does a lot, and actually the program has almost become synonymous with Jeremy because of all the great work that he and his staff do to make sure that it runs smoothly. So Jeremy, thank you so much for the work you do. And with that, I'd like to welcome you to the floor.
Thank you so much, Kefa, and I want to extend my warmest welcome to everyone here, the CADFP host and Diaspora Fellows. None of this would be possible without all of you. I think already some very important context to the program has been lent to us by Dion Arsenian, Jenico Kadoniak, and of course, Professor Oyewole, who we're grateful for the partnership with AAU, and especially grateful for the partnership of AAU as you've helped us plan this online convening. And thank you all for that and for giving of your staff time for this event. But of course, we've had one integral component to planning these kinds of events is, bringing in and developing an alumni steering committee. In 2021, when we came up with the idea of hosting an in-person alumni convening for Diaspora fellows in Washington, D.C., it was determined that this needed to be alumni-driven. So we took recommendations from our advisory council, as well as from other stakeholders in the program for who could serve initially on that program. So at that point, we brought a group of 6 individuals together who made that event possible. Then now, here we are in 2023 and 2024. We wanted to extend this program to the hosts. It's difficult. Of course, we would love to bring all the host fellows together in one place, but geography and travel makes that logistically difficult. And, we want to see, a lot of investment in our fellowships, which we find to be most important. So it was determined this virtual format would be very inclusive, and it was with all the lessons we learned during COVID about how to hold virtual convenings, we thought it was very doable. And so, as you can see by the number of registrants in this room today, that there is very much a strong response and interest in contributing to a forum like this. So we did at that point include some hosts based on nominations from the previous Alumni Steering Committee who served with us in 2021, as well as from other stakeholders. And so we brought in a few of our hosts to the group. So I would like to acknowledge their contributions to this planning of this program. This group has met once or twice a month since April of 2023, and worked closely with me to develop, the theme, the topics that we're going to be discussing, to identify the speakers who are going to sit on funder panels tomorrow, and also other panels that will be sharing information about possibilities for sustaining your collaborations throughout this event. And we're just grateful that Dr. Simon Mariwa from the University of Cape Coast, who served as a CADFP host fellow, and then also Dr. Lindani Nkube from UNISA, the University of South Africa, who also served as a host fellow. Our appreciation to Dr. Esther Obonyo. Dr. Obonyo was part of the original steering committee that planned the 2021 convening, along with Professor Philomena Okeke-Ihejirika. Professor Okeke-Ihejirika has also serves on the CADFP Advisory Council. So she serves a dual role here. We'll go to the next slide. We also are appreciative of Dr. Michael Olabisi. Dr. Olabisi has been working with us since the initial convening. And then, of course, you've already been introduced to Professor Kefa Otiso, who has definitely taken a leadership role of this steering committee. Kefa has worked with us ever since the beginning of the program, one of our pilot fellows, along with many of you who are in this room today. And Professor Otiso also sits on the CADFP Advisory Council. And then, of course, our colleague, Professor Alfred Nkolo Shitandi from Kisi University. Professor Shitandi serves on the Advisory Council for the Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship Program, and he has also been serving on the steering committee. So you hear, as we list these names of all these individuals, so they will be handling all the proceedings for the next 3 days. They will be facilitating panels. They'll be facilitating breakout rooms. So thank you to all of you for giving of your time to this program, for this alumni convening, and for other program activities. I am going to turn it back over to Kefa to get the agenda started. Thank you again to all of our speakers who delivered opening remarks, but a few pieces of housekeeping before we get started. One thing is if you can use your Zoom renaming feature, if you don't have your first and last name listed, please do go in and rename yourself to your first and last name. You can also include your affiliation, your institutional affiliation there too. This will just help us know who is asking questions, who is to be called upon during parts of this convening. One thing that I want to note is that during these larger plenary sessions, we will not allow for unmuting just because there are so many of us and there are so many contributions to be had from each and every one of you. So we invite you to use the Q&A function, and that Q&A function will be moderated by me. So I'll be watching out and then sharing those questions with the group, and the members of the steering committee will also be monitoring that. At certain points of today and Thursday, we will be using the breakout room feature on Zoom. So each one of you will be asked to join a breakout room today, and you'll have about 90 seconds, I believe, to click on the box to be sent to the breakout room, or you will automatically be sent to the breakout room after that 90 seconds. Once you enter the breakout room, you will be able to start your group discussion about our various topics, which Keifa and the advisory steering committee are going to cover here in a few moments. And you will also be able to raise your hand, and someone from the support team will unmute you so you can speak. Of course, you are also welcome to use the raised or the Q&A box or the comments or chat box during those sessions. So we hope for full audience participation during those sessions. You know, what we will do with this program, you know, at the end of these 3 days, we will be welcoming, writing a summary report that will be made available publicly with the an outline of the deliberations and also some of the ways forward and next steps for the program and sustaining it. And before, one more piece before I do turn this over, because there's another individual in the room that I really would like to acknowledge, is working on this report. We have a Rapporteur General, Dr. Kiwal.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, for your regards. So I'd like to make some quick remarks, and then we keep the program moving. Pretty much the main overview I'd like to offer is the following. Pay attention to the theme, which is sustaining the Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship. That word sustaining basically is what is common among the topics that we're going to discuss today. You know, it makes no sense to start something great as this one and then we are unable to sustain it. So the key word is going to be sustaining. How do we make it sustainable so that actually it lasts in the long term and is actually able to serve future generations? As many of you know, the African diaspora in North America is actually growing. It used to be small. Now we are somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.5 million individuals and growing very, very rapidly. In fact, somebody has mentioned that the new African immigrant diaspora in North America that has come here since 2000 exceeds what came here during the period of historical slavery. So you're looking at a very, very rapid increase. And as you know, North America is also, especially the US and Canada, is working very, very hard to strengthen its linkages with the African continent. And therefore, you can expect that the diaspora will become even more important and will continue to grow. And within the African continent, you do know that a number of almost every country and even the AU itself is looking to strengthen its collaborations with the diaspora. And for that reason, of course, we want to make sure that in the space of academia, the diaspora plays its rightful role. And so, therefore, the key really is this word sustaining. And so even as we go towards domestication of the Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship Program, as we look at building successful research collaborations, as we move on towards sustaining collaborations, it is the same word that is repeating over and over again. Above that, I hope that also as we meet here, you will take the opportunity to network with fellow alumni and some of the individuals that will be talking to us today. Because remember, at the end of the day, when people meet, it's very, very important. We, as Africans, we remember Chinua Achebe's famous statement that when kinsmen gather, it's not because anybody is saving anybody from hunger, or that they cannot see the moon from their compound. They can. You know, the reason we meet is because it's a good thing for brethren to meet for the purposes of networking, sharing knowledge, and actually charting a new way into the future. So with that, I'd like to shift towards where you are in the program under topic 1, domestication of the Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship. I've already mentioned why we put that at the top. Funding is very, very important in this whole endeavor. It may have started with funding from the Carnegie Corporation of New York, and we are still thankful that the corporation continues to invest. But in the long term, what will be important is really for this funding to come from domestic sources, whether it's the African Union, individual African countries, and those sorts of things. It is a need that we have identified even since 2021 when we met in Washington, D.C., and it's one that actually we want to continue engaging in because we have not really seen too much movement on the continent in terms of domesticating the program. A number of us are involved with talking to national governments from the various countries that we come from and the supranational organizations like the African Union to make sure that actually this thing continues. And of course, in North America, there is also a push to try and see if we can identify new sources of funding to make sure that the program is sustainable. So, but at the end of the day, we'd like the foundation to be a program that is domestically funded. You can think of things like, for example, the Fulbright program and those types of things in the US that are domestically funded. And obviously, if we were able to have something comparable on the African continent, that would be really, really great. Now, as you see this session, we are leading it with Professor Alfred Shitandi from Kisii University. We are in contact, but there are connectivity issues in parts of the continent. So, but he's very much with us, and as time permits, he'll be able to make his remarks. So in keeping with time, just to make sure that we don't run out of time, time flies when you're having fun, like we're doing here, meeting with our friends and colleagues from across the globe. And by the way, we are very thankful that we live in a day and age when we can actually be able to gather from various continents thanks to technology, and it's getting even better. So what I'm going to do next is to introduce our next keynote speaker. You already have the bio, and if you don't have it, it will be made available. But what we agreed in terms of protocol is basically to stick with the titles alone for the simple reason that a lot of the individuals that are speaking here today actually have fairly long CVs. And if we started reading, we would end up not doing a good job, and then we leave out some details and people become upset. So please bear with us. It's not for not wanting to read the bios or not recognizing the contributions, but it's just an easy way for us to keep it consistent and also be able to be mindful of time. So with that, I'd like to invite Professor Jane Nana Opok-Agyeman, who is a former Minister for Education in Ghana. Professor, go ahead. Professor Nana?
Mute. Hello, can you hear me now, please?
Yeah, I can hear you now, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, I started by greeting everybody individually and to thank the organizers, especially AAU, for inviting me to be part of this conversation. I'm very, very happy about it because it is an area for education and collaboration that I respect so much. I've noted the areas of emphasis to connect the African diaspora in the US and Canada with higher education in Africa for many areas, curriculum development, training, mentoring, and so on. But more importantly, to sustain the collaborations. That is where I want to emphasize or locate my presentation. You want to domesticate the program, and by so doing, tap intellectual capacities of Africans who live away from the continent and who work in academic institutions. As I said, this is very important. I want to go on by looking at what gaps may exist. And I speak from the perspective of us already been introduced as a former Minister for Education, as a former president of my university, and also I was very, very lucky to partner with a colleague at the University of Ghana to launch and sustain the AHP program, the African Humanities Program, which was funded by the Carnegie Corporation. And I want to thank them very much for all the good things that have come out. So I just will be isolating a few points and then speak to them. One, in terms of sustainability, I would really, really respectfully urge that the program involves the governments right at the beginning. This is important because if funding normally has a lifespan and the program envisages that governments will take part of the cost or be financially involved, then they need to know and they need to be part of the conversation as early as possible. Since the program is intended to direct expertise in the diaspora towards the continent, this is very, very welcome. We recognize that our continent is moving in different ways physically, and that we have a lot of expertise elsewhere. And therefore, I'm happy that this is going to happen. And I made that point about involving governments because of the ways in which most of our universities actually are structured and funded. We don't have that kind of, let's say, complete or near complete financial independence away from governments. Therefore, that is why I make that I made that point. Because I believe that this will make the interventions even more successful. I also want to go on to raise other issues that can get in the way. And then also to get the universities, for example, every university may have a strategic plan, may have its ways in which they are growing their universities. And for the collaboration to be sustained, we need to know so that we can meet each other halfway. I suggest this is very, very important. Sometimes there's a course being taught elsewhere, very exciting, very interesting, but I believe that course fits into a larger plan. Therefore, we need to look at both sides and see, what are the plans on both sides? How do they coincide? At what point do they converge? That way, I believe that the outcome will be very good because the whole program is well-intentioned. Yes, it is a one-way street now of Africans in the diaspora coming on the continent, but I want to see that the results become a two-way street. Therefore, it becomes mutually beneficial regardless. And in so doing, if there are proposals, both sides must sit and look at the concept itself. They must look at the methodology, they must look at the results and the application of the results. Sometimes even issues of copyright can be very, very problematic when they needn't be, because at the beginning, certain cards were not put on the table and people didn't quite understand. I also want to look at the issue of how long these scholars will be coming. What are the different ways? Is it sabbatical? Is it a year? Is it, in what is the context? I think we need to know. And then also match timetables. For example, is a year the same in University A on the African continent as in University B in Canada or US? I think this is important in avoiding a situation where students may be abandoned in the middle of a course. It happens too often. And I don't think that these are the reasons why so much money is being pumped into this program. We want it to be successful. We want it to be sustainable. We want the benefits to be mutually beneficial, as I've said already. Sometimes it's also a matter of, let's say, equipment. Some are lucky enough to come with equipment, but these equipments must be maybe parts or the If it's a science project, the specimen, whatever, that is why I believe very strongly that the governments must be involved, the institutions must be involved, and everything should be laid bare, just so that whether the person is coming for a sabbatical or a extended period or a short time, it doesn't really matter. But the institution must have a very, very clear understanding of what the whole thing is about. And then also to avail ourselves of the culture of the institutions. I'm very strong on that one. I know there are Africans who lived away for a while coming back home. A little bit of orientation won't hurt, especially about where the universities have developed to, if I may use the word. It may be student culture, it may be campus regulations. These sound like trivial things, but I don't think they are. They may even be modes of curriculum delivery. They may be just student-professor relationships, and so on and so forth. So I'm saying this because the institutions themselves, the governments, must at least craft their own education policies to speak to developmental trajectories. And therefore, exchanges, so whether it's domesticated or not, must ground itself in the direction in which the institution is heading. The cross-fertilization of ideas, of course, is very important. And therefore, looking at, just having the experience of how others are doing it is very important for the host institution too. This is not to say that whatever they're doing is in a closed room and they have no business learning. The very fact that somebody is coming with other ideas is something to be embraced. And I think it is better embraced and sustained when there's understanding, when there's clarity, when there's openness, just so that people don't have all kinds of ideas about what people are doing and why they are doing it. Again, another area will be the subject of benefits. This is critical. This is very, very critical. In other fellowships, maybe we just shouldn't be heading to a place where we are creating a different class of people in terms of economics, in terms of access, in terms of many things. Therefore, I think when we come to the funding, we have to look at all of these. If, for example, the person is going to Department A and is bringing this equipment, is the equipment only for his course? What if he leaves? What is the level of commitment? I think all of these are important. Assuming he's only expert coming into the department, maybe the university should be interested in training and graduate programs in ensuring that there'll be others to continue this, if that person has to leave or whatever the reason, if he cannot be there for much longer than is expected. So I would like to end here and just sum up by saying that this is a program that's very important. I've had personal experience working with Carnegie. They did an excellent job with the AHP, funding students projects and PhD research activities on the continent. My own university benefited a lot from it. Ghanaian students benefited a lot from it. Therefore, it's very, very good. It even went as far as to produce books out of the thesis of students. And therefore, now helping our brothers and sisters to come home and support the system is even more fantastic. And I am very, very happy about that. All I'm saying is that there may be small gaps, there may be small things we may overlook, but I'm hoping that all of these have been taken care of. And therefore, we can only hope that the program is as successful as it is intended. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. for your remarks. Jeremy, I'm wondering, do you see any question on the comments that maybe Prof can respond to? Because we have about 4 minutes before we go to the breakout sessions. Or those who are monitoring the chat.
Yes, thank you, Kefa. I think one of the questions that I thought was most important to our discussion was about I guess kind of the stakeholders, to kind of pull together a couple of questions like the stakeholders involved here, and could the keynote maybe speak a little bit more about the government's contribution, better about the direct contributions of the higher education institutions, and down to the including the academics and researchers who would help facilitate a domestication agenda. That's kind of summarizing 3 different comments that came through.
Yeah, Prof. Agerman, do you want to comment on that? On the funding component?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much for the question. Taking the example of not only Ghana, I think the vast majority of our state-funded universities on this continent, they are state-funded. Every so often, we have some fine interventions, but those interventions have a lifespan, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, whatever. And the originators and funders normally expect that at the end of the lifespan of the project, the government will take over. And all I'm saying is that we need to involve the government right at the beginning to plan its own takeover strategy. And this is very, very possible when the governments themselves have been involved in the programs at the beginning. They've seen the benefits, and therefore they can strategize to make the takeover as smooth as possible. For example, I have talked about, or I gave the example of somebody who is either compelled or wants to leave the program whenever. And this, so at that time, what does government do? What do the institutions do? So the receiving institutions should not just be excited that, oh, we needed an expert in this area and we have one. I don't think that's enough. We need to know, yes, we needed an expert in this area. For how long, for what purpose? The universities must be part of the dialogue. If the universities are interested in sustainability as they are, the universities must know or must have a say in exactly what the scholar is coming to do. For example, if my need is about growing people for my maybe IT department, whatever, then I'm interested in somebody who's coming to support me, train graduate students to fill that gap, should that happen. So that is what I was talking about. And a lot of the research is carried out, of course, at the universities, because we have a very weak foundation or basis for funding research. It becomes a huge challenge. But again, the receiving institution must know who owns the research when it's all done, who owns the copyright when this collaboration is ended, and so on. That is why I raised that issue about having a good stakeholder discussion. And I think when that foundation has been laid, yeah, there may be issues, but not big ones. Thank you very much. Have I answered the question?
Yeah, I think you did, and in some ways it actually sets us up nicely for the breakout sessions, because I do encourage.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I do encourage participants to start there and actually engage that issue, because that's actually going to be one of the issues to engage. And by the way, if you have more questions for Professor Agerman, you can also raise them there, as well as continuing to type them, because we'll do our best to see whether they can be responded to in the course of the session. So I wanted to, and thank you so much, Prof, for the remarks and for responding to the question. But we hope you stick around so that maybe at the end, if we manage to have a few more minutes, maybe you can give us a government take on some of these issues that academics sometimes we have a tendency to approach from 30,000 feet. But in your case, you are an academic, you've been in government, and you see things from a different perspective. I've actually benefited a lot myself from that stakeholder engagement from the beginning, and actually doing it from the start so that government can also, what I heard from you that was most important is the government needs to plan its takeover strategy. And I think it's a very, very important phrase that will probably show up in the breakouts, and maybe it will even come back later on. So in the interest of time, then we want to start preparing for the breakout sessions. There are going to be 7 of them. There are about 220 people on the call. So in order for the discussions to be, the breakouts to be anything close to being meaningful, we are going to have 7 breakout sessions, 7 rooms. You'll automatically be assigned to one. And once I end my remarks, somebody will push a button and you'll find yourself in one of the breakout sessions from 1 through 7. Room 1 will be facilitated by Simon Mariwa. The rapporteur will be Isabella Tete Ahinakwa from the AAU. And there's also going to be a technical person, Randy Butler, and the AAU backup technician who is going to be Jonathan Kana. So there are going to be 4 people in the room, that basically a facilitator, a rapporteur, a technical assistant, and a technical assistant also from the AAU. That is going to be the way it's organized in every one of these 7 rooms. And because of technological issues, you might find maybe that hopefully it's not going to happen, but in the event that one of the facilitators drops out, we have asked the rapporteur or the technician in the room to keep the conversation going. And of course, one of you senior fellows may also want to step up if necessary, but we hope that is not going to be the case. So the questions that we're going to engage with are pretty much outlined for you. Actually, the objectives rather than the questions. Objective 1, define domestication and why it matters. Objective 2, outline best practices in domestication. Objective 3, identify and showcase successful models of domestication. And objective number 4 is looking at the way forward and next steps in domestication of CADFP. And building on some of the remarks by Professor Ajiman, you do see that there are a number of issues that need to be addressed, maybe that have not been engaged with, from the beginning of the program, and which really is why we have to have this discussion on how do we domesticate it, who is going to lead some of these initiatives, and what are the goals of domestication, and how do we get there, highlighting what is going on right now, and how do we sustain what is existing in terms of domestication efforts. Now, everyone, please understand that these questions are there just to guide us and keep us on track. And of course, when you have 200 people, 217, it's possible that actually you have other questions that should have been raised that the planning committee was not able to raise. And we do encourage you to raise them because people are taking notes so that actually we can have a meaningful engagement. And at the end, we make sure that we don't overlook issues that should be raised as part of this effort to domesticate. So feel free to add other questions that we may not have raised. The ones we have raised are here to give you something to start with. And of course, we hope you engage with them. But as I said, if we forget anything, please also make sure that you raise it in the room. So it's 9:55. And with that, I'd like us to break right